Good morning and welcome to the hospital board meeting for May 11th, 2022. I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. And with that, I turn for an approval of the agenda. Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Moving now to the adoption of the minutes of March 23rd, 2022. Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Moving straight down to actually the staff report. So I turn to staff that would like to present this, please. Chantal, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in here because we had a discussion about introducing Chantal. So many of you may not have met Chantal Yates, who is our manager of finance in accounting operations. So some of you may have met her before because she did a presentation recently on asset retirement obligations. But we thought this was a good opportunity to reintroduce her, and you're going to hear from her a few times today. So with that, I will hand it over to Chantal.
Thank you. And welcome again, Chantal.
Thank you. And thank you. I appreciate it. I'm actually going to introduce Lenora Lee and Sarah Burden from KPMG. They're our auditors, and they are going to present the 2021 financial statements and the audit results. So pass it off to you.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me at the meeting today. What I wanted to do is just touch on some of the highlights of the audit findings report, which is included in your package, and address any questions that you might have in regards to it. The audit findings report, the purpose of our report is to provide you with some information as to our areas of focus with the audit, the status of our completion, as well as any final steps required to complete the audit of the hospital district. So I'll probably touch on a couple more items in this morning's presentation, and as many of those will be similar for this afternoon, so I won't go into as much detail there, but it is our first time meeting this board, so really welcome any questions that you might have in terms of our process and contents of the report. So in terms of overall status, we are substantially complete. We were able to work on site at the regional district office last month and received lots of support and very timely communication from management in terms of being able to complete the audit work. In terms of status at this point in time, the only items that remain outstanding are our discussion with the board and approval of the financial statements. At that time, we'll be ready to finalize our audit opinion, and we will also receive at that time a management representation letter from management that simply indicates that we've received all the information we need to in order to complete our audit and that the statements are accurate and complete. So all of those steps are regular status in terms of where you typically would be at this stage in the process. A couple highlights in the findings report executive summary indicate that our audit is risk focused. And so when we select transactions or areas of focus, it is based on risk of where there could be error within the financial statements. The accounting policies that have been applied in the preparation of the statements are consistent with previous years, so there have been no changes or new accounting and audit standards that have been implemented in the current year. And we also confirm our independence in this executive summary, that there's no other services that have been provided that would impair our independence in conducting the audit. The first page of our report speaks to materiality, and overall materiality for the hospital district's financial statements was established at $370,000. Materiality is generally a measure of precision in the financial statements and how we scope our work. So the auditor's report, as drafted, is a clean and unqualified opinion, and that indicates that there's no material errors within them and that they present fairly in accordance with the accounting standards. So when we speak to presenting fairly and that there's no material errors, this is the slide that really gives you direction as to what that means. So overall financial statement materiality was established at 370,000, and that's well within the range that the audit standards allow, which is generally 0.5 to 3% of a benchmark. In this case, was established as revenues. When we audit the individual transactions, we are auditing to a lower level of detail. And if we detect any errors or adjustments, we establish a posting threshold, it's referred to as. And that dollar value was set at 18,500 this year. Generally, if there's adjustments that are less than that value, it's referred to as kind of a below de minimis value. They are not tracked nor recommended for adjustment. Anything greater than 18,500 would be tracked, included in this report, and recommended for adjustment. The next page speaks to the presumed risk of fraud relating to management override of controls. And this is an area that is a required area of focus for all audits, regardless of size, sophistication, risk, industry. It's required by the audit standards. And what this area focuses on is that management is in a position that they are able to override internal controls that would otherwise appear to be operating effectively on a day-to-day basis by doing things such as perhaps posting year-end journal entries or recording entries directly in the financial statements at the time that they're being prepared. In response to that, the audit standards require that we perform certain procedures, such as testing those journal entries that are perhaps posted by individuals that we wouldn't otherwise expect to be posting journal entries, entries that are posted in and around year end, reviewing significant estimates, as well as looking at any significant unusual transactions that are recorded during the course of the year. So on completion of those procedures, we have not noted any anomalies or issues to bring to the board's attention in the completion of those audit procedures. There are also required inquiries with yourselves as board members to determine if you are aware of any known or suspected instances of fraud that those are asked of you to share with us either on this call or separately. The next page speaks to some areas of focus in terms of the financial statement balances. Overall, I would say that in terms of the statement of operations, the revenues and expenses of the hospital district, we take a substantive approach. And what that means is that for things such as tax revenue, we look to the source documentation, the budget and amount that's expected to be collected, and the money that eventually ends up in the bank, and agree that those amounts are consistent with what is approved in the budget and levied in terms of expected rates of collection. For expenses, we select a sample of grants that have been paid and review the cash payment as well as the invoicing from Island Health, again to test the accuracy that those amounts have been recorded correctly in the statements. In fiscal 2021, one of the less frequent, more unusual transactions is the disposal of land for the new hospital site. So we reviewed the agreement to transfer that property as well as the transaction in terms of dollar value to ensure that that had been removed from the statements appropriately, the land, and that any gain or loss, of which there was none, had been recorded appropriately in the statements. In terms of the statement of financial position for cash and investments, we directly confirm those values with third parties, whether it be CIBC Mellon for investments held in pooled investment funds, or with the banks in which you hold your cash. There was no differences noted in terms of the cash bank accounts. And in terms of the investment accounts, we did propose one adjustment to record those amounts at cost. And that's a particular accounting rule that requires that investments at this time be recorded at cost. Throughout the course of the year, they're generally tracked and monitored at fair value. And so the adjustment that was recorded in the statements was just to adjust it from market value to cost, which is the requirement under accounting standards. The next page speaks to accounting policies and practices. In terms of the disclosures, the presentation of the financial statements, those are all consistent with what's required under public sector accounting standards. So there was no significant issues in terms of presentation to bring to your attention. And then the last page I wanted to speak to was just a highlight of any corrected and uncorrected differences. So I did mention each of these as we were talking about investments, which is primarily the nature of the corrected adjustments that have been recorded. There is one uncorrected item, which is not material, and it relates to some of the debt reserve monies that are held by MFA on behalf of the hospital district, that at present those are disclosed within the statements, not necessarily recorded as an asset. So not a material item that we believe needs to be adjusted, but we've just tracked that here for information, and management is looking into whether or not they want to record that in the future years just to clear up that particular item. So those were all of the highlights I wanted to touch on in the findings report, but certainly happy to address any questions that you have or to go further into any detailed content that you may have reviewed.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lee. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we have a recommendation. Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is number one, that the audit findings report prepared by KPMG attached to the April 26, 2022 Finance Division report to the May 11th, 2022 Hospital Board meeting, attachment B, be received. And number two, that the Cowichan Valley Regional Hospital District's 2021 financial statements as presented be approved.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. I believe Ms. Burden was on here too. And we'll see you in a bit, I think. 11:30.
Thank you.
11:30. Okay, and with that, we look to a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, can I have
Yes.
some clarification? Are we adjourning until the board meeting now, or are we?
There's 11:30 closed.
Okay, is there any appetite to go back into open and try and finish Cow, or?
No,
Okay, see you at 11:30.
thank you.
There was a motion at Cow to move all that stuff to the board. So
It's
that-
I know,
that's where it'll be.
I just wondered if there's any way we could not do that because it's a potentially long board meeting, but I hear that there isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there was a mover and a seconder to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. See you all at 11:30 with a new login for closed. Thank you.